Hello, Vagina. Cheers to being a woman, but womanhood, it's a jungle down there. Get ready to be real, raw, and totally uncensored as we explore the depths of health, sex, motherhood, and relationships. Strap in for those topics that make you cringe, make you blush, and make you want to hide your face. Welcome to the Hello Vagina podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Hello Vagina podcast. Today with me, I have Michelle Purta. She is a wife, a mother, and a life coach who helps women be happier in their marriages by teaching them how to empower themselves. Welcome to the show, Michelle. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the show today. We're going to talk about relationships and specifically marriage and being a mother. So, Michelle, how did you get into becoming a life coach specializing in mothers?
Yeah, so it kind of just happened, to be honest with you. I used to be a 9-to-5er, and when I went on maternity leave, I realized that once the baby was here, I was like, I do not want to go back to work.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to find work that was both fulfilling and pay the bills, right? I just kind of took a look at what I could do, and I just realized that I just kept getting pushed to look into being a life coach. So I sought out training and quickly realized from helping people that my favorite kind of people to help are moms, because we're often overlooked. We are often so busy taking care of other people that we don't take care of ourselves and our own needs. And I want to squash the idea that we can't be happy in our marriage while raising kids. Like, I want to make sure that people stop putting a pause on their marriage while their kids are young, because let's face it, if you don't nurture it over time, you're left with a roommate or a co-parent or a divorce. And I really don't want that for people. I've seen that in my parents. They're now divorced. They chose not to nurture their marriage. They chose not to work on their communication or on themselves individually. And the children, as well as the parents, are impacted by that. Yeah. So whatever I witnessed in their relationship, I took that into all of my relationships, and it kind of screwed me over. Not that they did it on purpose, but I didn't have good communication or any sense of self-awareness. And after several relationships, only did I realize I'm the common denominator. I am the problem. And so I needed to really take a good look in myself and figure out my own stuff before I could even begin to have a healthy relationship with someone else. And thank goodness I did, because now I just love my marriage. Yeah. We have a solid partnership, and I feel so good about what we're demonstrating and leading for our children.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing. So prioritizing a marriage when you have kids, obviously it's a difficult task, from the pregnancy and the hormones that you have, the snaps that you have at your partner throughout that period into having a newborn, and your hormones are still rebalancing, you're sleep deprived, you're doing what feels like all the work, and the communication really just disappears from your marriage, and you just become, like you said, roommates, that person's just there. They go to work, they get to leave all day. You have those feelings of resentment because you don't communicate how you feel or what you need from them. So talk to us a little bit more about, how you help women in terms of prioritizing their marriage when they've got kids.
I mean, you've said a lot already. As soon as you become pregnant, you undergo this transformation of who you are. And as soon as the baby comes, like, life does get a lot more challenging. You're not sleeping well because the baby needs to eat around the clock. you are constantly worried about taking care of this child, making sure they have a clean diaper, making sure they're fed, making sure they're in clean clothes and they're sleeping. And it's very easy to then neglect the relationship, because then you're thinking, well, you're a grown man. This is a needy child. Naturally, I'm going to prioritize the child. But what people don't think about is prioritizing your marriage doesn't have to mean spending more time with your partner than your kid. What it means is get the necessary done for your child, but have the intention of, I'm still going to connect with my spouse, whatever that looks like, whether that's 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, a weekly date, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever works for your family in that season that you're in. You still have to have an intention of accomplishing that. Otherwise, if you leave it up to like your own memory, life can just pass you by while you're on autopilot and you just forget.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like, what happened to us? I don't even know how we got here. Well, it was in those little decisions that you were making unintentionally to prioritize your child over your spouse. So I often work with my clients on making sure, A, are you taking care of yourself, for one, right? Like if you're not happy and fulfilled, truly, not just like on the surface, like, oh yeah, I have this baby, I'm so excited and so in love, but like, are you actually happy underneath it all?
Yeah.
That's step one. And then step two is, what are you needing from your partner? That communication piece is really important to keep open, even while you're navigating, how do I take care of this new addition in our family, whether you're going from 0 to 1 or 1 to 2 or 2 to 3, so on and so forth. There is an adjustment phase for the family. And so what that means is, say everything. Like, communicate what you're feeling, communicate what you need, communicate more than you need to, so at least that he's on the same page as you. Because women, I feel like we've been socialized and groomed to take it all on, and like that is our role and we're supposed to do it with a smile on our face. Like, but I don't subscribe to that.
Yeah.
I subscribe to an egalitarian type of partnership where it's like, well, these are my strengths, so I'm going to do these are your strengths, how can we leverage it as partners? How can you be there for me to support me in what I need? How can I be there for you to support you in what you need? Because without that, there is no partnership. You just have two people feeling resentful without any knowledge of what's really going on. And then that's when you get those like fights, right? The fights that don't make sense.
Yeah,
You're
definitely.
Fights and you're like, that's not really the problem here. That's just like what you think is the problem.
That's just where it's blown up because you've let it bottled and bottled and bottled until you can't.
Exactly.
Anymore, and then, you've lost it over the garbage bin.
Exactly. Right. Something as simple as that. Yeah, seriously. Like, you left your sock on the floor and then it becomes like this huge fight. Like, is it really about the sock though? Probably not.
Yeah, that's right. And your husband should be your safe place. I think for a lot of women, it's like you said, we take it all on and we have that expectation for ourselves that we are required to be the person that does it all and doesn't say anything about it. And it's sort of come to this space where we're too afraid to even say to our closest friend, I'm not doing okay. This is hard. This is crap. I'm struggling. I'm not happy. Like, I love our child more than anything, but I'm tired and I smell like vomit and I want to wash my hair. And your husband should be your place that you can say that to and have that support and begin that level of communication with them so that they know that you need them to watch the baby and to not walk in on you halfway through your shower while you still have shampoo in your hair and be like, how much longer are you going to be? But to take it on themselves, as scary as it is for them. But I guess even communicating with them, what is their concern about looking after the newborn? What is their concern about giving you that 10 minutes to have an uninterrupted shower? What are they scared of as well, so that you've got that two-way communication, because it's not just about, I guess, telling them how you are feeling and what you need, but also what they need or what they're concerned about in being able to provide what you need.
100%. We are all individuals. We each have our own experiences. And, whether he's open about it or not, whether he's aware about it or not, he does have his own fears. And if we're constantly, quote unquote, saving the day, we're never giving them the opportunity to get good at something, especially like child rearing. If we're like, oh, forget it, give the baby to me, I'll take care of it. Like, you're robbing him of that experience of getting better at it. Like, you only are good at it because you've spent time doing it, right? You've done the trial and error. You've figured out what works for you, but what might work for you might be different for him. Just like with teachers, they're all different and it all works for the children. You just have to honor and respect that they have their own experience. They get to feel what they feel, and you get to choose how to support them and still meet the needs of the family as a whole, like as a unit, but also as individuals. Like, what does the child need? What do you need as mom? What does he need as dad? I think if we're all focusing on the overall happiness of the unit, everything should carry on pretty well.
Yeah. So what are some good ways to sort of start to approach conversations with your husband? If you're someone that you've got to that place where somewhere along the line you just became, like we were chatting just earlier before we got started, that for some reason when we get married, we assume that our partner becomes a mind reader and they know what you want and when you want it and how you want it done. So how are some ways that if we've gotten to that place where communication has broken down and we're not in a place where we're effectively communicating anymore, what are some good ways to start bringing up those conversations, I guess, in a way that stops your partner from being defensive to it as well? Because I guess that's sort of something that when you've stopped communicating, that sort of I want to talk is not a good kind of lead-in conversation starter.
No, absolutely not. Because then they're like, what did I do? Why am I in trouble? But it's not about that. It's not about, okay, it's time to go to the principal's office because you're in trouble. But rather, hey, like, we just need to get on the same page. The first step really starts with you. Spend some time with yourself, getting clear on what it is that you need. What are you missing? What do you need? What does that look like? Getting clarity around the whole issue before you even broach the topic with your spouse. Because if you just walk in there saying, I don't like that you did that, guess what that comes off as? Nagging and blaming, criticism. No one takes that well. But if you go in there like, hey, I realized that triggered me, or that didn't sit right with me, and I realized that it's because I needed this. From now on, what do you think about doing this? Then you can get that two-way dialogue going on. Like, okay, so you need to accomplish this. Okay, how about I do this instead? So then you focus on the solution rather than the method. And it's if he comes up with it or if he agrees to it, then he has buy-in. Then he's more likely to do it rather than you dictating what it is that he needs to do to fulfill your need. Because he does have a choice of whether he will do it or not. So wouldn't you rather him be okay with whatever it is that he's going to do to help you?
Yeah, definitely.
Secondly, show some compassion. It's not just about you. Everyone does things for a good reason. So if he did something that upset you, what was it that he was trying to accomplish? Maybe he had some other intention that he was prioritizing that you weren't prioritizing, right? Or maybe he's just generally unaware of what your experience is and you just need to share. There's so many different variables that go into how this can pan out and why things didn't go the way you expected it to. But just like you said, people are not mind readers. It doesn't matter how much time you've spent with someone. It might seem like they can read your mind because they know you really well, but we as people evolve over time. We change, and so that means our needs change over time. And we cannot assume that every single person that we spend a lot of time with can anticipate all of our needs. So we need to be honest with ourselves and be honest with the people that we truly care to nurture our relationship with, so that we're not disappointed under expectations that were never even shared, because that's just not fair.
No. And that's right. I think that's something too, that's a great point that you've brought up. You know, our expectations, you know, you can't judge somebody for not meeting them if you never express what they are. You know, you're setting them up to fail already, and you're not giving them a chance to actually be able to meet your needs because they have no idea what the need is.
And it's okay to feel disappointed, because sometimes we kind of like think, oh, they should have known that, but I guess how could they have known that if I didn't say it? But in that moment, then it's time to take accountability. Like, I'm sorry I snapped at you. I thought you knew that I da 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 da.
Yeah.
I never told you, and I'm so sorry. That's my fault that I didn't share that with you. But going forward in this kind of situation, it would be really meaningful to me if you did this and this and this. You know, like, just move forward, own up to your part, be that vulnerable person, and say, I messed up. This is what I need. Can you deliver it? Then you can grow from it, and instead of using it as another, you know, notch on your belt for why marriage is hard or whatever, you know, it's another excuse.
Yeah. And I think that's a really great point that you bring up, is that I think often we don't think that it's our fault. It's always them. You know, we're doing an amazing job. We're looking after the house. We make sure everybody's fed. We make sure the bills are paid. We make sure that everybody is happy and clean and healthy. And therefore we just assume that it's not our fault and it is our spouse that is doing all the wrong. And I think the hardest part is to actually be critical on yourself and look at yourself and be like, am I setting them up to fail? Am I not giving them the opportunity to be able to improve? And am I actually a part to play in our issues?
Yes.
I think it's, you know, that looking at yourself is probably the hardest step to know
it requires
what.
Yeah, it does require a lot of courage to do that, but it is so worth it, because it opens up a safe space once they realize that not only are you pointing the finger at them, but you're also pointing the finger at yourself.
Yeah.
And knowing that both of you are flawed. So that evens the playing field, instead of you approaching it like, you did this wrong, you're not enough, you suck, you know, like, nobody ever wants to feel that way about themselves, being told from a partner, like, hey, you're not enough for me.
Yeah.
But if you're like, hey, I'm also working on things, then it's like, okay, you know, we're both flawed, we're human, this is how it goes, we make mistakes, we learn from them, we grow together, and we move forward.
Yeah, definitely. What are some ideas in that you suggest to your clients around making that time together? What does some options of what time together looks like? I guess for some people, they sort of don't know. My husband and I have recently started doing date night and making it that non-negotiable of,
yes,
you know, even when we go, you know, look at the bank balance and be like, oh, you know, maybe we shouldn't go to dinner this week, or maybe we shouldn't do this, or, you know, we're too busy, you know, making it that non-negotiable that once a week we go out and we put our phones down and we just actually have conversation. Because it was something that we realized we were lacking, you know, very early. We've been married a year, so very early on in our marriage to have had a serious communication breakdown, but to, you know, realize that we had it. You know, what are some ideas that you give people around, you know, a date with a few young children might not be your reality? So what are some other sort of suggestions that you give people for making that quality time? Because I guess it's about quality time together in whatever that looks like.
Yeah, it all stems from your intention. How committed are you to staying connected with your spouse? Because if you are prioritizing it, you will make the time. It might possibly mean sacrificing something else. It might mean sacrificing binge watching TV shows. It might mean sacrificing time with friends. It might mean sacrificing being with your baby 24/7. Like, you can ask for help. You can get a babysitter, you can get family. And if your baby's young, like, I understand it is difficult to leave, especially if you're nursing them, but you can leave for an hour, like right after they're fed, or if they're sleeping, leave for an hour. Like, start doing something. Or when they're sleeping, maybe you guys do something at home intentionally, not just like, oh, here's another day of us watching TV together, or oh, we're sitting on the couch next to each other, but we're on the phone, like
Yeah.
you really have to be deliberate about the type of time you're spending with each other so that you are actually connecting. Whether that mean like you slow dance in the kitchen for a song, or you cook dinner together, or you play a board game together. Like these are all things that don't require money. But when you are at the point where you can spend the money, go hire the sitter or go out like on a night out of town, or go on a little trip. I think whatever you see as the vision for how you want your marriage to be, move towards that. What do you need to do to keep that alive? For us, it's not feasible for us to have weekly date nights because we have 2 kids. My mom still works, so we just don't have that type of care in place. But what we do is once a month, my mom takes the kids overnight and we have a weekend date. So I'll drop them off Friday or Saturday and pick them up and have family dinner on Sunday. And so we get to decide what we do. And before the date's even over, we have our next date weekend lined up so that we don't leave it up to chance to remember, oh yeah, we got to book our date for the next month. Like, if you schedule it, it'll happen. You just have to be really deliberate about, okay, when are we doing this? Not like, oh yeah, we'll get to that later, or now is not a good time, excuse.
Yeah.
I'm always asking people, like, are you using your kids as an excuse to not connect with your husband? And I trigger a lot of people when I say that because it's so true. You're like, oh, but they need me. They're going to be fine.
Yeah. That's right. I think a lot of them, they go to daycare, they go to school, they have, when they are that little bit older, they are without you for long periods of time.
Exactly.
So that 1 to 2 hours with your spouse really isn't a huge amount of time.
No. I mean, imagine what would happen if you guys get divorced because you didn't put the time in. Like, then what? Spend the time, spend the money if it's needed, and connect with your spouse so that you can have a solid foundation for your family to ride on. Don't just assume that everything's going to be okay and live life on autopilot, because it just does not work out that way.
Yeah. And I think definitely that's sort of where our brains go, is to divorce. Once that communication's sort of been lost for such a long period of time, we just don't see any other answer. And I think as women, our sex drive is very much connected to that connection with your partner. So it's that you then decide that you're not attracted to your partner because you're not communicating. You just become those roommates. There's no physical connection. There's no emotional connection. And you just figure that I'll find somebody else that I can connect with. But that's not necessarily what it is. You connected with your spouse to begin with.
Right.
And if you're not dealing with that ability to communicate, then you're just going to have that same situation occur again with this new person.
Exactly. Not all marriages that are seeming like divorce is the next step need to be there. It can be fixed. And it does all come back to, okay, well, what do you want? What part do you play in this? How can you start to own more of it so that you can create that space where having open communication becomes a possibility, so that you can start to talk about the harder things? Because even if you've spent years not really communicating and full of arguments, you can come back from it.
Yeah.
Especially if you were at one point happy. It's just all a matter of prioritizing, being aware of what your own needs are, communicating it, showing compassion, and being the partner that your marriage needs you to be. That's all it is. And I don't mean to oversimplify it, but it truly is just that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's definitely, it's that there is no end. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. But I think for a lot of people, it is that communication and, even seeking counseling. I think for a lot of people, we're sort of have this stigma around self-help. And I think we're definitely getting a lot better in that space and actually wanting to seek out guidance, where it had a stigma for a long time that only, you know, crazy people needed help, you know, and I'm not crazy. There's nothing wrong with me. And that it's not necessarily about there being something wrong with you. It's just learning a tool to communicate. If you can't, you know, it's like learning anything. If you can't sew, you seek out help to learn how to sew. You gave an example earlier about your son learning the violin and being frustrated that he couldn't do it. You know, you have to learn. We can't just pick up the musical instrument and magically play it like a professional. And if we don't have communication skills, like there's nothing wrong with actually seeking out help from somebody that specializes in helping with communication and learning, because for some of us, we don't know how to start those conversations and the questions to look at ourselves, and just need that little bit of extra prodding to sort of have somebody approach you with a question like, what about this? And get you starting to think in a way that you haven't thought before.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with you if you don't know how to communicate effectively. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't learn from my parents. I certainly didn't learn it from school. So where would I have learned it otherwise? Like truly. And I think a lot of people are in the same boat as me. So if you're struggling with communication, it is not your fault. It's just you weren't taught. But there's no shame in asking for help, because it has helped me tremendously to learn about how to communicate effectively, how to look at myself with no shame.
Yeah.
And truly approach my marriage with compassion and empathy and partnership. And it has led us to a place where we can start to look at arguments as opportunities to learn more about ourselves and each other, rather than like just nuisances, like inconvenience. Like, yeah, it sucks to fight, but our fights are productive now and they take less time and we move on. It's not some recurring theme that happens every week, every month, every quarter where we're just fighting with the same thing. Like, we fight about it, we move on because we've taken the lesson from it.
Yeah.
And I truly think that if everybody can learn how to do this in their marriage, it will be better for it.
Definitely. That the communication I've noticed just in mine currently, that change in communication of actually having to say how you feel and explain yourself, I guess, in an argument, and, you know, let the other person know why you feel the way you do or why you've reacted the way that you have, to get them thinking as well. Because I think there's sometimes a lot of things that, you know, get us upset for no particular reason, but it's because what's happened, you know, in our minds happened for no particular reason. It's like, why did you do that? There's no benefit to you doing that. Are you trying to start an argument? And it's just about creating that awareness of ourselves and what we're actually doing in our relationships as well, that have an effect on our partner and cause responses. I think sometimes we, you know, put our blinkers on and just do our own thing and don't think about how we're affecting our partner. And once you're in that serious relationship, it obviously goes a lot deeper than just surface friendships. You know, you take it a lot more to heart because this person is your person.
Yes. And because of that, you then look at him like, why would you do that? And it's almost with a tone of like, why are you such an idiot for doing that?
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel good as the recipient.
No, definitely.
It's almost like you were really dumb for doing that. And instead of like, oh, what made you do that? Like, what motivated you to do that, so that you could understand what their line of thinking was that led them to that action, instead of judging them from like from the start.
Yeah. And I think it can help them as well to realize like, oh, I actually had no reason for that, and I can see why that would upset you.
Exactly.
And to try to self-check themselves, you know, and for us as well, like to get them to say the same thing, you know, if we're being in that sort of nagging space, that's how it comes across. If you've got that more effective communication and they can say to you like, babe, that comes across like really naggy when you say it to me like that. It allows you to then have that better form of communication as well.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of think about the way you're going to say something before you say it, to try to have a better response. And it works both ways. If you can say it in a better way to your spouse so that they take it in a better way, there's a lot
Yeah.
more likely that the outcome is going to be what you want rather than leading to an argument and backs up
Right.
in a
Right.
different.
And to add on to that, sometimes there does need to be a level of grace that we need to give ourselves and to other people depending on what's going on with life, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're stressed out, like for me, when I'm stressed out, I start to have an attitude and I have no idea I'm doing it
Yeah.
until my husband points it out. And I'm like, oh, whoops. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, it does go both ways. We are not perfect. They're not perfect. And we get to try and be our best version of ourselves. And like I said before, it all starts with taking care of ourselves first. So
Yeah.
if we could prioritize ourselves, prioritize our marriage, like everything will work out as it should.
So what are some good resources that you would recommend to women to get started if they're sort of looking at better forms of communication?
Yeah. So first of all, I would highly recommend looking into 5 love languages. I think that from the start, while it doesn't address communication per se, I think it addresses just how you may be neglecting ways that your husband is showing you that he loves you just because it's not your language, but it's his language.
Yeah.
So I think having that level of awareness of, oh, my effort isn't translating the way I want it to, well, then I should probably stop doing that because then you get resentful, right? You're like, but I did this. Why don't you appreciate it?
Yeah.
So I think that's number one. And secondly, if you truly are seeking to learn more about communication, I would say go to my Facebook group. I'm constantly offering free trainings for moms on how to communicate effectively with their spouse so that they can stop having those repetitive arguments, so they can stop resorting to nagging and feeling like they're not getting what they need and feeling resentful and hopeless. And that group is called Marriage and Motherhood, and it's an and sign, so it's the ampersand. And that group is such an amazing group of supportive women. I just love them.
That's fantastic. And they can also find your information over on your Instagram at Her Connected Family.
Yes.
As well. We will put all those details over on the hellovagina.podcast.com website, so they'll be able to find a link to your website if they would like some extra training from you. You obviously work with women all over the globe, and all of your social links as well, and that to your Facebook group so that they can get some information and some tools, because it's all about just getting those tools, getting that access to information, learning. It's a journey. Marriage is a journey, motherhood is a journey. It's all a journey. It's all part of life. That you'll go. There's ups, there's downs. You're going to fail.
Yes.
Over and over again.
Over and over.
It's about just putting your best foot forward. So just before we finish, is there a question that I haven't asked you that you would like to finish on?
Yeah, if you are feeling hopeless about your marriage and you're just not really sure what to do next, you tried all the things and you're like, I don't know how to save it, but I'm not quite ready for divorce. And I know we need help, but my husband doesn't want to see a therapist, doesn't want to see a counselor. I really would recommend that you chat with me because I do offer one-on-one coaching just for the moms. So yeah, we don't need your husband involved. And all we do is we work on you. We work on who you are and what you've brought into the marriage, how you look at things, change your perspective, work on your communication skills. So it's like mindset plus strategy. And I coach you throughout the whole process. And as you transform, your husband will start to see that you're changing and he will start to feel safe enough to change, and your marriage will then change. So if you are interested in doing this, I do offer a free clarity call where we can uncover everything that's going on in your marriage and figure out if working together is the next thing for your marriage. So email me, visit my site, go find me on social media, however you want to chat with me. I am all ears.
Yeah, perfect. We will pop all of those links over on the website. But thank you so much for your time today, Michelle. There's been some great tips in there for women around communication. And I'm sure everyone will get some value out of that, because I don't think anybody is 100% perfectly communicating in their marriage.
Not even me.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.